What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to another video of Iron Shield AJ. Today we're gonna be reacting to Turkey Tom. Shout out Turkey Tom. Part 2 of the Chris Shan video. Go watch it if you haven't, man. Okay.
Sacred text.
I hope this is the same place, 'cause I really don't even remember.
Sonichu came to be when Chris accidentally collided with a Pikachu that stood nearby as he fought a monster. Due to being charged with energy from the Chaos Emeralds, the Pikachu was permanently transformed into Sonichu. Rosechu, on the other hand, was a Raichu that happened to get hit with the rainbow that emitted from the creation of Sonichu. Eventually, for no reason other than Chris's tendency to insert everything from real life into his work, Sonichu and Rosechu kissed and became lovers. About a month later, as Chris resumed his community college classes for the 4th year, he came up with a brilliant idea to solve his problem. He posted up the very first attraction sign, which was a resume to attract a girlfriend. The sign read, 21 and single white male, shy, smart, young at heart, computer skilled, humorous, a great thinker and go-getter, natural salesperson, enjoys good parts of life, diplomatic, friendly, loves his family, peaceful, very creative. He's lonely, seeking a cute 18 to 21 single female companion, 18 to 21 years of age, does not already have a boyfriend, single, average to slender weight/body type, white, lives in Charlottesville or Ruckersville area, does not smoke or drink alcohol, happy, positive personality, average/high income, drives a vehicle. If any men read this huge sign, mind your own business. And to all men with girlfriends, except marrieds and blacks, go jump off a cliff.
Wait, what? Dang.
Have a nice day. You know, I would make fun of the fact that he requires the girl to be average to slender, have income, and drive a vehicle, despite Chris himself possessing none of those things. However, my standards have become so low due to the typical kind of person I cover in my videos that, honestly, I'm just glad he's looking for someone older than 18. Even lolcows used to have standards back then. They should strive to be more like Chris. Oh yeah, don't let me forget to mention that he also emblazoned this sign with some, like, white version of Sonichu, perhaps to signal how much importance—
Wait, hold on. Did he say be more like Chris? Do not be like Chris at all. Oh God, do not be like
he attributes to the girl being white. This month is also special because
you'll know why in a minute.
When Chris makes his debut as a recording artist, dropping his album Christian and the Hedgehog Boys. It's interesting to note that the cover includes Chris alongside Sonic and Sonichu in the foreground, while two black versions of Sonic, at least one of which is supposed to be Shadow the Hedgehog, are in the back, looking upset. The album boasts 8 tracks, all of which consist of Chris reciting parody lyrics over actual songs, not even instrumentals, just full-on songs, ranging anywhere from Backstreet Boys to the Macarena. Seriously, just get a load of So Need a Cute Girl, Chris's rendition of the Backstreet Boys' I Want It That Way.
And I never wanna hear I have a boyfriend.
Another track, Best Friends Forever, is subliminally dedicated to the aforementioned Sarah Hammer, who at this point had a boyfriend whom Chris was jealous of. The lyrics are quite interesting. You hang out with your new friends you made and your boyfriend who acts as a black Sonichu. It is your choice to go with them instead of me. Soon you'll realize you're not complete because I'm not there. If it wasn't clear yet, Sonichu, along with pretty much every other character he made up, were either self-inserts or blatant wish fulfillment fantasies for Chris. Because of his utter inability to deal with the problems he was facing in his life, he articulated them through his OC. After a few months of his sign being posted up, without any takers as you'd expect, it was taken down by the dean of the college, Mary Lee Walsh. Chris had a few words to say about her. That evil witch, Mary Lee Walsh, mocked me and even crumbled my efforts and threw them into my face. It was serious, heart-shattering insults like that which literally shattered my heart to almost nothing and murdered my soul. Like, as if I didn't already understand that love can't be hurried. But they all left a huge impression among the general population that having a sweetheart was illegal in Virginia. Thus, Virginia is for virgins, not lovers. Despite Mary's best efforts, every time she took one of Chris's signs down, he just made more and more of them and posted them up around campus, even creating MySpace and Facebook pages to advertise his pursuit of a boyfriend-free girl. As 2004 began, Chris began mulling over the idea of merging his writings with his drawings and making comic strips for his Sonichu stories. He also tries to negotiate with Mary Lee over emails, saying, "Mary, I've slept on it and I've realized that note hanging is not the way to get attention, and I don't really want to meet with either you nor Susan, no offense. I'll tell you what, let's forget the meeting, and if you will allow my newsletter to stay in distribution, I will do all of the following. I will never hang notes on the wall again. I'll consider stopping my silent treatment on Susan. I'll consider knocking you and Susan up my scale of respect each by 2 points. 0 = equals no respect, 10 equals respect. By newsletter, Chris means Sonichu's news dash, which he thought would more effectively attract girls by mesmerizing them with his artistic talent. Mary wisely chose to not engage with Chris's shenanigans, opting to just remind him of when his appointment was and leave it at that. At said meeting, despite Chris's Saul Goodman tier bargaining skills, he was forbidden from putting up signs as well as distributing his newsletter, which deeply embittered him, leading him to resent Mary and make her the primary villain of Sonichu's adventures from then on. In one of the diary entries he would post to his no longer existent MySpace account, Chris wrote, "Mary Lee Walsh made it illegal to distribute the news dash. I am very angry at that. In response, I plan to incite the masses and hope they demand the return of the news dash so my chances on getting a girlfriend can be restored. I've also declared war on them as well." About a month later, he added that Mary Lee was trying to get him kicked out of college altogether for his stunts, though it's unknown the degree to which that's true, as Chris is a very unreliable narrator. Since he could no longer attract the ladies in the college campus, he took his sign to the Charlottesville Fashion Square Mall. Though initially seeming more promising than his love quest attempt in the college campus, he ran into problems at the mall as well. His diary entries go into detail. "I've just had my worst trip to the mall. I was working with my heart on a red string of fate when from out of the blue, a jerk cop shattered my heart and ripped up the red string. I am very mad and upset because that jerk took my idea for a fall, just like that expletive at PVCC did." Before I read on, I have to make a note here to explain that the red string of fate Chris mentions is referring to a heart made out of paper that he would throw at girls at the mall, in the hopes they held onto it so that he could reel them in. If this sounds insane, it's because it is. Anyway, Chris continues, "I was not bothering anyone at the mall today while I was just trying to sell myself when I got arrested for trying. I fortunately did not go to jail, but I've been stripped of my right to go to the mall by myself. I would be required to bring my mom or dad with me. My independence and my soul were practically murdered." This encounter inspired him to create one of his most famous terms, jerk-ops, a portmanteau of jerk and cops. From then on, whenever something bad happened to him, Chris would find a way to blame it on the jerk-ops. He even made a Pokemon card for them, with the description reading, "This copper fiend wants to shatter the virgin's heart by destroying his tools for attracting a boyfriend-free woman." Within a week of his arrest, and possibly because of it, Chris gets suspended from his college, saying, "I got suspended from PVCC by the board, and I have that meddling expletive to thank for this as well. I am super angry. My dad is bloodthirsty for revenge as well. He's going to write to U.S. President George W. Bush Jr. and Laura Bush to help me get allowed back to PVCC. We all curse death upon..."
Mr. Chad, how did that go? Oh God, did George Bush ever get back to you?
Mary Lee Walsh. After this, both his diary entries and his attempts at the love quest died down for the time being, most likely due to his parents telling him to cut back on it to avoid getting in even more trouble. In the meantime, Chris was mandated to consult a psychiatrist for an evaluation as a result of his community college's board. It has a few noteworthy excerpts, such as, according to his parents, there have been a number of incidents which led to his suspension. They feel strongly that the suspension was unwarranted and did not take into account the patient's developmental limitations. One such occurrence was during an interaction with African-American classmates. These young women were questioning the patient regarding his search for a girlfriend, at which point he told them they could not be his girlfriend because they were not white. This was perceived as racially insensitive, although from the patient's perspective, he was merely pointing out that they did not meet his standard criteria for a female companion. To the surprise of many, the psychiatrist considered Chris to be dealing with his autism in a relatively healthy way, despite the occasional mischief he got up to. One interesting point that has been brought up as a consequence of this document is the fact that both the love quest and Sonichu, Chris's two most destructive obsessions by far, only began manifesting after Chris began taking Paxil in 2000. Though I'm no specialist on the matter, some have said that Chris should not have been put on an antidepressant, let alone Paxil, which is the most potent SSRI available. Considering how mild his symptoms were up until that point, it would make a lot more sense for him to just have regular appointments with a psychologist instead of being medicated with no follow-up whatsoever. The psychiatrist that did this particular evaluation, however, was not of this opinion, and instead recommended that his dose of Paxil be increased from 20 milligrams to 30 milligrams daily. I bet that after this, Chris improved by leaps and bounds. Regardless, the rest of 2004 was quiet, with the exception of a video Chris recorded in his bedroom singing a few of his songs, wherein he was wearing the outfit he would become almost exclusively associated with. Along with it, he is donning his esteemed Sonichu medallion, completing the Chris Chan uniform to a T. Unfortunately, despite asking Santa Claus for a girlfriend, Chris spends yet another Christmas as a virgin full of rage. 2005 rolls around, and a few posts begin popping up on Chris's website, claiming to be hot chicks who have seen seen him at the mall, but didn't come up to him for one reason or another. Though few and far between at this point, these were Chris's first proper trolls, first of exceedingly many. However, one of the people that commented this wasn't joking. An actual girl witnessed what Chris was up to at the mall she worked at and decided to seek his website out. This was quite the event since, up until this moment, Chris never got the time of day from anyone, let alone a girl. Her name was Anna, and in a blog post titled "The Tale of the Crazy Pacer," she writes extensively about her encounter with Chris, saying, "Once upon a time there was a guy who paced in front of Abercrombie and Fitch. He'd come and do it for hours on end, just walking back and forth. He was an okay looking guy, not evil looking like creepy molester dude, so he would pace for his allotted time, then leave. Sometimes as he paced he would sing or shout. Nobody really could ever tell what he was saying. Oh yeah, and he always wore the same shirt, a nice little long-sleeved red and blue number that had a gold crest on the left side and a white collar and cuffs. Someone, I can't remember who, suggested that the next time he looked in, we wave at him. Whoever suggested it should die, unless it was me, in which case I feel I've received enough punishment. Of course, he looked in and we all waved at him. He looked kind of bewildered and sort of scared at first, but quickly caught on and waved back. So we went about our business, doing floor set and junks, and a little while later he came in. I was kind of apprehensive about this. I mean, I've been doing floor set all day and I didn't really feel up to dealing with another crazy, but he came right up to the counter I was standing behind, and he looks right at me, all fidgety and twitchy, and this conversation ensued. Chris, you look to be about 19 years old, right? I busted out laughing because he guessed it right. That's exactly right. See, I know these things. I can just tell how old someone is, he said, kind of proud and still timid at the same time. My name is Christian, but you can call me Chris. I'm Christian W. Chandler. Oh, hi Chris. So, do angels have names? I found out later that he meant to say, do angels like you have names? Poor guy was so nervous he didn't get it right. Probably, but I don't know. Well, what's your name? Sorry, I don't go for pickup lines, I replied, kind of laughing. His face kind of fell and I felt sorry for him, but he pressed on. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to insult you. I was just asking your name. So what is your name? My name is Anna. Okay, well, Anna, is there any way I could, get your phone number and maybe I could give you a call sometime? No. Well, do you want my phone number then? You can call me on my cell phone. No thanks. So, do you have a boyfriend, Anna? No, I'm not looking for one though. Alright, well, do you have access to the internet? Yes. Okay, hold on 1 second, I'll be right back. I nodded, and he went back to his spot where he kept his 2 tote bags and his Sam's Club cup. So Christian came back and handed me a card with a crudely drawn Sonic the Hedgehog and some other yellow Sonic-looking creature on it, along with Christian's name, email address, and website. It was a homemade business card. That's my email address, and you can just email me sometime, okay? Okay, I said, not intending to email him at all. Despite how awkward these exchanges self-evidently were, you gotta give it up for Chris's autistic riz, even if just a little bit. For a guy with as many setbacks as him, he handled the situation with more dignity than expected. Many guys today are afraid to even approach a girl. On March 24th, he released one of the earliest proper comic book productions, Sonichu Adventure Sub-Episode 1, dubbed Jerkop-tastrophe. Despite being called Sonichu Adventure, it's mostly just about Chris himself, retelling the story about being banned from a mall. On March 29th, an update to his love quest is posted to his diary. Well, at the mall today, my heart had an extremely fast recovery. Then it became majorly shattered again. I went to the mall like normal. I picked up some chicken nuggets and a drink. Then I went to my spot. I pulled up a chair to sit and eat my food. Then from out of the blue, this cute girl approached me and she asked me if I was looking for a girlfriend. Her name was Hannah and she was 18 years old. I said yes and we small talked for a bit. Then she invited me over to Starbucks for coffee. After she left, I became very excited and oh my god, all over. After calling mom and eating my nuggets, I lifted the chair with such cheer and grace and spun around with it like a dancer. Then I put it back where it was. I felt that my love quest had finally come to an end, and I so elated that my shattered heart had a full fast recovery. I went to Starbucks and we talked about basic things. I showed her my Sonichu scrapbook. She was very impressed. I gave her my email and both my phone numbers on a Sonichu site card, and she gave me her email address. I was very attentive as I took notes about her and maintained eye contact. As I left her, I gave a double take flirt. That was the rise. Now here comes the fall. As I was sitting at my spot thinking about future steps for later dates, Anna and Dana told me that when they talked to Hannah, she told them she was setting me up in a prank. I could not believe it, so I found and asked Hannah. Sadly, it was true. Then in major shock, Anna and Dana told me that when they talked to Hannah, she told them that she was setting me up in a prank. I could not believe it, so I found and asked Hannah. Sadly, it was true. Then in major shock, my heart shattered again by 85%, and I let out a big no! After that shout, I got kicked out again, and I'm still without the Fashion Square shopping center that I've grown accustomed to after my whole life. So my love quest has restarted, and as for that date of ours, I'll always remember it, but as far as I'm concerned, it does not count as my first date. I was not as happy as I was today in a long time. I am once again heart shattered and sad, but I will not give up on my love quest, because there has to be one true boyfriend-free, dateable, non-pranking girl out there somewhere. Poor guy really cannot catch a break. Around this time, Chris finished Sonichu number 0, the first proper edition of the comic book series, the hand-drawn premiere issue as he puts it. The stories in it were mostly reworkings of previous standalone comic strips, complete with nonsensical plots and nightmarishly ugly artwork that Chris Chan later became synonymous with. He also begins drawing new Sonichu releases during his public outings for his love quest, and is even noticed by someone who gives probably one of the best summaries of Chris Chan's essence at this point in their blog post. So Sonichu returned to Alderman today. I'm not sure what to make of him. He sits in his chair and draws his Sonichu comics, harmless I assume, yet I feel like he knows he's different. He knows that the world rushing in front of him is not his own. Surrounded by the brightest students in America, whatever that means, he sits in his chair and draws, 23 years old. I'm not sure he even graduated high school. In front of him, texts of Plato, Faulkner, God, and Kleist swirl. Does he have the capacity to understand these works? Whether he can or not, I'm not sure, but there is something in his eyes that realizes that there is a level of understanding and thought that he is unable to partake in. As he slumps lower and lower in his chair, with each student he eyes reading or holding a book, he falls into himself, into the markers and colors on the page in front of him. He seems intelligent enough to understand that he does not understand, and that is the hardest part of all. I never thought I'd see Chris be described this poetically in my life. I suppose there's a first time for everything. Amidst these sightings, Chris decides to go to the Mid-Atlantic Anime Convention, where he took a few printed copies of Sonichu number 0 and distributed them to whoever would accept. As his love quest sinks to new lows, Chris gets kicked out from the local McDonald's, where he's also been conducting his attraction sign experiments. I'll spare you from hearing the diary entry in its full extent, but the Managerks, Chris's nickname for the managers, started calling the cops on Chris for loitering in their establishment. In later Sonichu episodes, the manager received in-universe stand-ins. One of them was named Married Senor Comic, an alias which is completely unexplainable to anyone with a functioning brain, and for no apparent reason, had robot arms and legs. After Married Senor, Chris's creativity must have run out, since the other one was just succinctly referred to as Black Fat Jerk, on account of the fact that, to Chris, that's all he really was. If his diary entry is anything to go by, Chris began explaining his situation to them in song and dance. When one of the managers asked Chris to just have a normal conversation with him, he sat silent for a minute until he came up with possibly the most schizophrenic own ever uttered. I do not speak to any man other than myself, because they have all taken the pretty girls, leaving me with none. What a wordsmith. He followed this up by giving them verbal punishment, the finger, and last but not least, curse ye ha-me-has. What's a curse ye ha-me-ha, you may ask? Well, luckily for us, Chris has demonstrated in video.
Curse ye ha-me-ha!
A month later, a similar situation played out at Target as the managers called the cops on Chris. He claims that, as he was about to give them a prepared speech, 5 cops chased him down, pulled his pants, handcuffed his wrists and legs, and hogtied him. After being briefly taken to county jail, Chris was given a court date for disorderly conduct and trespassing. Later on, he dramatized the situation in a Sonichu comic, as he always did. Fortunately for Chris, after 2 hearings, he was given a $30 fine and had to pay $56 in costs. Within a week of the Target
$30 fine and you had to pay 56.
fiasco, he was once again arrested for following too close while driving. And yes,
Fuck on, bro.
at this point, he was a licensed driver, if you can believe it. After his suspension from college was lifted and he started regularly interacting with other people his age again, things relaxed a bit for a while as advances were made in the love quest. After bidding goodbye to Anna, who moved to Utah, Chris makes a few more attempts at finding a date over MySpace messages, mostly to no avail. The first one was Jelena, who turned him down because he seemed too desperate. Then came Lindsay, who consistently rescheduled her dates over the course of 2 months in order to never actually have to see Chris in real life. Overall, things seemed dire for our brave hero. But it was around this time that he began to rouse online attention, with a thread on a Sega forum centered around Sonichu popping up. Earlier that year, YouTube was created, so the golden age of Chris Chan was at the gates. Meanwhile, he was getting some traction in his emails. Though his application to become an official Nintendo game tester was rejected, Chris got into regular correspondence with a girl named Megan. On the 1st of November, Megan emailed Chris asking him to buy an episode of Tintin on eBay for her. They had already met in person before in a video game convention a year prior, but it wasn't until these emails at the tail end of 2005 that Chris grew obsessed with her. Though she clarified from the get-go that she wasn't interested in Chris, or anyone for that matter, in a romantic way, this didn't deter Chris, who clearly saw her as a love interest and continued to invite her on dates. To date, Megan was probably the person who had been the nicest and most patient with Chris. 2006 marked a significant rise in Chris buying the most random, useless garbage from eBay, from My Little Pony and Sailor Moon paraphernalia to German World War II photos. Apparently, all of the purchases were influenced by Megan's interests. Based on their emails, we know that Megan was into MLP, Sailor Moon, and for some mysterious reason, Wehrmacht soldiers from World War II. Considering how desperate Chris was to get a girlfriend, it's surprising he didn't start LARPing as a Nazi to impress her. Eventually, he got her a Nintendo DS, which she turned down due to the fact that she already had one she bought herself. While Chris was busy spinning his wheels into the mud during his love quest by chasing after an uninterested Megan, he managed to graduate from community college, getting a degree in computer-aided drafting and design. Over time, Chris began wearing her down, continually being pushy about wanting to date her despite her repeatedly saying she wasn't interested. Most likely because of this, Megan severely limited the amount of times they met up in real life to once a week, and even then, Chris would take that as an opportunity to be as handsy as possible, which she obviously wasn't okay with. After months of this dynamic going back and forth, Chris overstepped a few boundaries when he started complaining about Megan being friendly with other guys. This was grating for her since not only were they not dating, but she was also not interested in the guys Chris was paranoid about. This caused her to email him in a slightly stricter tone, saying, "I don't want to have to tell you again or I might get really angry, because you know unwanted remarks or advances to a girl is sexual harassment, and I don't take that lightly, okay? So can you understand now? Anyway, sometimes I get the feeling that you copy me to get me to like you. Like Sailor Moon, for example. The only Sailor Moon thing you had was that adult video, and since I told you how much I love it, then you start getting into it. Kind of like My Little Pony. That kind of thing really annoys me. You make it sound like I have to get your approval to be that kind of friendly to someone." And I felt rather disappointed about those remarks. And you already know I don't love you, so why do you make yourself unhappy by holding grudges and trying so hard to win me over? So please, if you really want to make me happy, please let me make my own decisions and figure out my own life, okay? Besides, even if I had a boyfriend, what makes you think I'll stop being friends with you? I'm not that kind of person who'd say, "Well, I have a boyfriend now, so see ya." No, I'm not that kind of bitchy girl. You know I haven't talked to this person in a year. I'm not really wanting to get together with him either. Boyfriends aren't for me. Don't want them, don't need them. However, I can't say I like how much you call him a lucky jerk. Why is he a jerk? Why do you call all guys that? Because they take all the pretty girls, leaving you none to choose from? Hate to be blunt, but that's a pathetic way to think. You don't go to a mall and buy a girlfriend. The thing is, guys didn't take all the girls. The girls just didn't choose you. Quit blaming other men. Personally, I think you shouldn't be so picky about what they look like. All you say is you want a pretty girl. Well, it's the inside that counts. After all, a pretty girl can have the personality of Satan. Meanwhile, an ugly girl may have a heart of gold, but you wouldn't even give a second look, would you? I often wonder, if I was an ugly girl, you wouldn't even come near me, would you? Little did poor Megan know that the powers of the Chaos Emeralds render Chris impervious to reality checks of any nature. While this drama ensued, Chris never stopped cranking out new issues of Sonichu, all containing the same themes recycled over and over again, such as Sonichu's enemies always being conspicuously black, the text bubbles being randomly placed on the page with no discernible reading order, Chris vicariously defeating his real-life opponents such as Mary Lee Walsh and the guy who Sarah Hammer dated instead of him, so on and so forth. What was noticeable in the later episodes was that, progressively, Sonichu became a secondary character in his own comic, with the protagonist becoming Chris himself. Sonichu's function was primarily to serve and protect Chris, and every once in a while symbolically represent who he wanted to be. Additionally, other than real-life people, Chris also added a character called Crystal Weston Chandler, a female version of himself that seems to simultaneously fulfill the ideal role of the mom, the ideal daughter, the ideal sister, and the ideal girlfriend. The fact that this guy wasn't regularly seeing a therapist is a travesty, to be honest. As Megan put a healthy amount of distance between herself and Chris, his eBay purchases started drifting towards the salacious. Items include Bootylicious Love Doll, Pearl Beaded Prolong Ring, Nina Hartley's Guide to Sex Toys.
Yo, how the fuck y'all know what he bought type shit?
And my personal favorite, Space Nuts. After years of frustration, Chris began taking matters into his own hands, and following this general theme, he also decided to give up on Santa, since for the past 3 years, he was asking for a girlfriend which Santa never delivered. 2007 begins, and Chris begins working on a new project called Yep, I'm on TV, which consists of videos he had recorded on VHS tapes burned onto a DVD. Of course, he had no idea how valuable an archive of his activities would eventually become, and most likely he just did this out of his narcissistic self-obsession with every moment of his life. Later on, the leaking of this DVD was of great assistance to those interested in the CWC lore. But at the very end of this highlight reel about Chris's life, there was one video filmed solely for the purposes of being put into the DVD called Christian Weston Chandler's Future Message.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and dudes of all teenagers.
In this 9-minute long prophetic manifesto, Chris summarizes the lessons he had learned up until this point. He did this because, ideally, he wanted this video to be played in schools. In it, he goes on about why going to school isn't torture, why drinking and smoking are bad, the extreme importance of staying straight, and last but not least, that girls should consider dating uglier guys because they will have a better personality and a brighter future. It's around this time that Chris reconnects with Cole, his previously mentioned half-brother, to offer him a copy of his autobiographical DVD. For the first half of the year, it's business as usual for Chris, who continues to exchange emails with Megan, where she continually complains about him touching her when she doesn't want him to. By June, she leaves for Kentucky, and Chris misses her dearly since she was pretty much the only female he could get close to that wasn't his mom. This wasn't the only thing causing him to be upset though, as by the end of—
Hey man, I'm gonna end this shit here though. I ain't gonna lie to you, bro. Go check out all the reasons I really posted type shit. So yeah, go watch all the videos, man. I'm glad. Like, got a lot of great videos. This cat won't shut the fuck up.